Welcome back to another episode. Now you wouldn't think it to look around, but I'm still here in Istanbul, in Belgrade Forest, a perfect place to go running, burning off all those calories. Now I need that particularly because we're going around eating such delicious food. And today's delicious food is börek, and we're going to be finding out whether it is Greek or Turkish. The ingredients for börek are filling and dough. And if we're talking about dough, then we're talking about flour and water. The water you see behind me here in Belgrade Forest used to supply the whole of Istanbul with water during the Ottoman Empire. I'm guessing this water here has been used to make some delicious börek down the centuries. Oh my God, no! A börek shop? In the middle of Belgrade Forest? It can't be. It's just some birds, a common chaffinch and a great tit. Well, this is one of the best areas in Istanbul to come bird watching. It was recommended to me by a friend who also recommended that I should come to this area and try some of the special börek there is. But before we tuck into any food, let's look at some other places around Istanbul. I'm here on the Bosphorus Strait, the defining natural landmark of Istanbul, a body of water that separates Asia over there and Europe behind me. And actually what you can see behind me is Sarıyer, a district that's actually shaped a bit like börek, which is what we're trying today. And behind me, you can see the Rumeli Castle, built just before the conquest of Istanbul in 1453. Now you also notice it's a bit windy over here. It's a little bit cold, honestly, but this is what Istanbul is like. You have the Black Sea in the north and you have the Marmara in the south, which makes for some crazy weather systems, meaning 1 minute it's cold and windy like it is now, and in 5 minutes it's going to be sunny and hot. And you can see the sun breaking through the clouds right now. Let's hope it comes sooner rather than later. We have Galata Tower, built in the 14th century and still one of the most iconic buildings in the whole of Istanbul. Now back in the 17th century, a man called Hezarfen Ahmet Çelebi did the first flight of man, essentially, wearing something like a bird suit, and he used it to glide from Galata Tower onto the Asian side of Istanbul, a good 3 kilometers. He must have been very motivated to undertake such a dangerous activity. Well, perhaps there was a börek shop on the other side that he wanted to get to. We have Topkapı Palace, the center of the Ottoman Empire, where the sultans used to live, basically right at the height of its power when the empire was maybe the world's biggest empire. Now the palace reflected that power and that size, and there's a good 400 rooms in there, but I wouldn't get too excited because I don't think they're available on booking.com. This here is Rumeli Castle, just built just before the conquest of Istanbul, and it was built here for a reason. This is the tightest part of the Bosphorus Straits, so if you have this castle, you control the straits. Very important. You can also see I'm feeding the seagulls. It wouldn't be a trip across the Bosphorus if you didn't try and feed the seagulls. They can, there we are, catch it in mid-air. If you throw it up high enough, there we are, look at them, amazing. They must have good eyesight. No, that one's too big. Oh, he got it. Very good. I think these seagulls have had enough. Let's go inside the castle and see what's going on in there. So I'm here at Rumeli Castle, built all the way back in 1452 by Sultan Mehmet, the year before he went to Istanbul and conquered the city for a new capital of the Ottoman Empire. Now you can see it's a perfect strategic position because from these walls, the cannon fire can hit any boats coming down from the north, giving them clean access to the rest of the city. Now, of course, it has a different role. Now it protects people from rushing all of the börek markets going on in Sarıyer. Now it's finally time to try some of this delicious burek. We've been all over Istanbul, we've seen some of the world's great sights, and honestly it's helped me build up an appetite. And burek is just the thing to sate it. Now burek is filled with lots of different layers of flavours. The things we're really looking for are vegetables, meat and cheese. Now, enough about the food, I'm going to go try some now. Burek is made with thin layers of dough called yufka, and then between those layers butter or oil is added, and then on the top there's a glaze of whisked egg to give it that extra sort of crispiness, really helps with the flavour. Then you put it in the oven, of course, until it's golden brown and the taste is pure gold. The Turks were nomadic folk centuries ago, and because of that, they didn't really have the concept of a baking oven. After all, who could carry around a baking oven on their back? So instead, they created the yufka culture, that is, making very thin dough and cooking it on a flat top on top of a fire. When the Turks came to Anatolia in the 11th century, they brought with them that culture of yufka to the area. As Charles Perry points out, a lot of people have always credited that kind of cooking with the Mediterranean, but in fact it had come from the Turks, from Central Asia to Anatolia. Now it's my job to taste the food, and I've never been happier for that to be the case. Thank you very much. Look at this delicious plate of burek. I'm going to take a bit of meat here. The meat is spiced really nicely, and of course, like all good burek, has a nice crispy top, just the way I like it. Now, where does burek come from? It's said, at least in legend, that it was made to order for Burak Bey, a pre-Ottoman prince, and that burek means belonging to Burak Bey. But the first mention of it is in the 13th century in Divan-i Kabir. And then after that, in the 14th century, we have a recipe from a Turkish physician given to a Chinese emperor, apparently as a dietary activity. That recipe has sheep's fat, mutton, leek, spices. All sounds very delicious. But of course with burek, one of its beauties is the different varieties that you can make. Let's have a look at the one that Eda has cooked up for us.
Selam Kenny, gerçekten ağzının tadını biliyorsun. Ben de bugün börek yapacağım. Sizinle malzemeleri paylaşayım. Bir su bardağı sütüm, bir adet sodam, bir su bardağı ayçiçek yağım ve bir fincan ayçiçek yağım daha var ama bunları ayrı yerlerde kullanacağım için böyle koydum. Susamım, çörek otum, tuzum, karabiberim var. Ben bugün böreğimi ıspanaklı yapacağım için 1 kilo ıspanağım, yarım kilo lorum, 4 adet yumurtam ve bir tane orta boy soğanım var. Önceden doğradım. Şimdi yapmaya başlayalım o zaman. Öncelikle ıspanaklarımı doğrayarak başlıyorum. Şimdi doğradığımız ıspanağın içine lor peynirimizi ilave edeceğim. Soğanı koymadan önce birazcık diriliğini yitirmesini istiyorum. Bu yüzden birazcık tereyağında çevireceğim. Ben şu an böreğim için harcını hazırlıyorum. Daha sonra yufkamı yerleştirip içerisine harcı koyacağım. Türklerde börek gerçekten çok fazla tüketiliyor. Aynı zamanda sadece bunu yapan işletmeler var. Yani sadece börek yapılan işletmeler var. Aynı zamanda Türk hanımlarının toplanıp buna da gün adını verdiği bir ritüelleri var. Burada börek olmazsa olmazdır. Mutlaka börek yapılır ve yenir. Şimdi soğanımı harcımın içine ekliyorum. Bunu güzelce karıştıracağım şimdi. Şimdi harcımız hazır. Sosunu yapacağım. Bir su bardağı süt, bir su bardağı ayçiçek yağı ve 3 adet de yumurta koyacağım. Evet, yumurtamızı da kırdım. Şimdi bir adet çırpıcı alıp sosumu çırpacağım. Ispanaklı böreğimiz için şimdi 5 adet yufkamız var. Bunun 2,5'unu alt katına, 2,5'unu üst katına koyacağız. Orta kata da harcımızı koyacağız. O yüzden şimdi yufkayı ayıracağım ben. Tepsimizi alıyorum, altını yağlayacağım yapışmaması için. Koyduğumuz her katın üzerine bu hazırladığımız sostan süreceğiz. Böreğimizin kuru olmasını istemiyoruz. O yüzden bu sostan her kata sürüyoruz. Sosun her yere geldiğine dikkat edin. Şimdi orta kata geldik. O yüzden harcımızı koyacağım. Daha sonra yufkaları eklemeye devam edeceğim. Evet, şu an harcımı koydum. Yufkalarıma devam ediyorum. Aynı şekilde üstünü kapatıyorum. Soslama işlemini bitirdim. Şimdi keseceğim. Ben kare şeklinde keseceğim. Üzeri için çörek otunu ve susam alıyorum. Maden suyu daha çıtır olmasını sağlayacak. Şimdi bu şekilde aralara koymaya, aralardan kestiğimiz yerin aralarından koymaya dikkat ediyorum. Şimdi önceden ısıtılmış 180 derecede yaklaşık 30-35 dakika pişecek. Ben böreğimi fırına atıyorum. Evet. Bu şekilde pişti. Şimdi size bir adet keseceğim. Bu sırada şunu da söylemiş olayım. Piştiğinde böyle kızarmış olduğunu gördüğümüzde anlıyoruz. Eğer bu kızarma olduysa pişmiş demektir. Hazır. Afiyet olsun.
Thank you very much, Eda. That looks absolutely delicious. Ellerine sağlık. I think that's how you say it. Health to your hands. Thank you very much, Eda. Now, with the passing centuries, böreğs have changed their shapes and sizes and fillings. We see one of the first really meaty recipes come from the western province of Bursa in 1502. And since then, the shapes and sizes have evolved and the fillings have evolved. In the 16th century, we started seeing more cheese recipes, more vegetable recipes, and things like potatoes. Today, there's a wealth of varieties and some specific, even just to small districts and areas that have their own delicious types of börek. I just hope I get to live long enough to try all of them. The reign of the Ottomans, börek culture started to move around the continents and around the surrounding areas. The Greek spanakopita almost certainly came from this moving around of börek culture. And the Burabe theory of the börek history is only one of them, but the most likely is that it comes from the word burmek, which in Turkish means to roll or to twist. It's from there that we get things like böreki or börekiki in Greece. These are more likely just descendants of the original Turkish version. That brings to the end a pretty busy day going around Istanbul and eating all this delicious börek. Now, looking at the etymology, looking at the history, looking at the way börek has been made down the years, we can say that this is definitely a Turkish dish. And I would go further than that and say it's really one of the most definitive and identifiable Turkish dishes that there are around. And this is one you should really try at home too, because you can unleash your creativity into these fillings. Anyway, thanks for watching again. If you enjoyed it, press like, press subscribe, and make sure you leave a comment below. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.